Hello friends, we are back here on the workbench with my 1960s Vox AC30 Super Twin. I am extremely excited for this project. Finally got a bunch of parts in so we can start replacing the resistors that we took out already and replace all of these caps and slowly but surely get this thing all dialed in and ready to go. Really excited. Off camera, I did a couple quick things. I cut the 3-prong power cord because it's just in the way and makes it really difficult to maneuver. And then the same thing, I took off the speaker jack here. That was not original, neither was the 3-prong. And yeah, just to give me a bit more of an easy time maneuvering the chassis, because it's very awkward to put it on the workbench and really awkward to film it. Just the way it's laid out, it makes it quite difficult to position it. So the last thing I'm going to do that I will show on camera is taking this top boost card, which is not factory, and disconnecting all of the connections on it so that I can work on it separately from the rest of the chassis, and then also have very clean access to everything here so I can kind of compartmentalize what I'm doing. So we got the soldering iron heating up, and we will go ahead and disconnect all of the leads coming off the top boost card. That includes the heater connection here. That includes these two shielded cable connections here, this green connection here, and this red connection. So, and then we'll be able to really, be thoughtful about making sure everything was done correctly when the person before me installed this card. So let's go ahead and do that bit by bit. Now I will say at the onset here that again, this is very hard to film. It's much harder than a fender that's nicely laid out, kind of perfect for capturing on video. So I'm not gonna be able to show everything perfectly, but you guys will get the gist. There we go. So let's see what's hiding underneath the the classic electrical tape. All right, I can barely tell what I'm looking at here. Let's just see if it'll. Let's see if we can just desolder it. Wow, so it wasn't even wrapped or J-hooked or anything, just kind of placed on top of each other. That's not what you want to see. And this other one is connected to the bus wire, and I can't tell how it's connected, so let's just heat it up and see what happens first. Wow. What is that disgust? Look at this solder. Holy cow. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's just a pile of gross, very poor solder. And the other one looks like it's just as bad. Wow. Again, not sure if you're going to see that or not. Rough. Quite rough looking. And the other one, really not much better. All right, we just have one more connection to go, this green one. It was hooked. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. There it goes. It was hooked, but it wasn't actually hooked around anything. It was just resting on top of the solder joint like that versus being hooked around the wire right here or something. So, wow. I'm glad we did that. So now we have this whole thing as a separate unit. And we can go through it and confirm everything was done correctly first and foremost before installing it as just a separate task. And then we can really focus on this without the top boost card as well. Okay, so let's see what we're working with now. So now that we've got the space all opened up for us, I think the first thing I'm going to do is reinstall a trim pot here. So as part of the parts I picked up, it's this Piher, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Piher 500K pot, and that will be for the depth control of the tremolo. So I'm just going to go ahead and bend this tab out so we have some more room here. And this will basically go like this. All right, we've got it placed roughly how I want. This was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be, mainly just because the leads do not line up, perfectly. So these two on the end here, you can see it's quite a bit wider than the actual tags here. So, and they're also not a traditional wire, so you can't just turn them to the side. They've got very limited movement to go inwards or outwards. So really hard to get that to fit. And then it has to go at an angle because the back single lead here has to go here to the side. So the whole thing has to be shifted. Then there, on top of that, there's a resistor right here that's in the way that it slightly rests on unless you have it floating. So all of that to say, it's not as clean looking as I would have liked. However, it will be functional and it'll be okay. So basically what I want to do is just kind of prop things up a little bit with, I'm just using this little bit of wick, just something that I can kind of put under it to hold it up, and then I can solder so it's floating and not sitting on top of that resistor right there. That's kind of the goal. All right, something like that. Not the prettiest thing in the world again, but it will work. Now we'll go ahead and solder to the tag board. This is our first. We've desoldered. We've not soldered to it yet, so we'll have to see how this goes. All right, that looks good. So now we'll go ahead and do the other side. Really tricky with the camera. Again, this is just so much more difficult to work on than a fender with the camera. Strong, it's floating. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it will be functional, which is obviously the most important piece. All right, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to these two resistors right here. We can see that one of the tags actually broke. That was before me. That was the, or like that when I got here. These were 2 carbon films. I just wanted to make it all carbon comps. So we picked up new carbon comps for there. Let's pull up the value schematic here. And those were both 10Ks. So we'll be putting 2 10K carbon comps right here. So we've got this one floating up a little bit because there's a screw right underneath. So I've got it just kind of propped up with this dental pick just to hold it in place while we solder. Just putting a slight bend, nothing major. Again, I want to prop it up just a little bit if we can. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and cut those leads a bit shorter on the end. So this one's going to be a bit more tricky because, as mentioned, the actual little tag there is broken. So this will just have to lay flat. All right, so what I've done here is hooked this one so that it goes down into the hole a little bit. So we'll have a bit of a mechanical connection there, and then I hooked this side as well. Let's go ahead and add some solder. We'll do this side first. Actually, I'm going to tack solder this side first just so it holds so I can get this side better. Then I'll go back to it. Alrighty, so this should be an extremely strong connection even though there's no tag anymore. It's down in there. I bridged the gap with the solder, so this should be super, super solid. I'm not worried about that at all. So now we can go ahead and move on to the next resistors. Next up, we've got these 2 resistors. This is a 15K right here, and the next to that is a 47K. They both measured way out of spec, so we're going to go ahead and pull them, remeasure, and replace if necessary. So first thing we're going to do is just take our desoldering braid here, the wick, and try and gently remove the original solder. It is a shame because these have the paint on it, so we will lose the paint, but they measured way out of spec. So all right, so it measured about 18K versus 15K. That's not terrible. I might put it back in, actually, TBD on that. But let's go ahead and take this one out and measure that as well. All right, so this resistor, we lifted one leg off of it, and this is supposed to be a 47K, and it measures 100K. So we'll definitely want to be swapping that one out. So let's go ahead and undo this side. So let's go ahead and remove this cap real quick, just so we can work from a blank slate. It's kind of interesting. These leads from the factory were not actually put through the eyelets, but rested on either side. That's very interesting. All right, let's go ahead and clean them off with wick. So I'm going to attempt to fish the original cap into the actual eyelets on both sides, as well as the resistor. So we'll give this a shot. So we're going to go ahead and solder this side in first, and then that'll hold it so we can do the other side easier. Beautiful. Now we can go ahead and do this side. So I'm going to go ahead and put in this new 15K as well, since it measures exactly 15K and the other one is about 18K, which is not horrific, but also not great. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm trying to add in enough solder to kind of have a little bit of a pool right here on where the tag kind of makes this 90-degree angle. The original solder joints all seem to have that. So everything looks good. Super shiny solder joints that look a little out of place next to everything that's dull, but it's a solid connection. So feel pretty good about that. Let's go ahead and continue moving down. All right, the last resistor we need to replace on this side of the board is this 10K that was right here. Now, what's interesting is that this section is not actually on any of the layouts I could find for the amplifier. This was added in. It's kind of using a extra, which is, I guess, traditionally an empty spot, where the person before me installed this 33 microfarad cap, as well as the red wire that was going from the top boost card to here. Then they had the 10K here, and then they have this little bridge connection, all part of adding the top boost to this amplifier. Now, I'm not 100% sure on if this is correct or not, but for now, I'm going to install the 10K, and then I will have to find a schematic for the top boost and confirm that that 10K is supposed to be in there. But it was working seemingly fine when it was in there, so I'm just going to operate on the assumption that is correct, and we can always easily take the 10K out and swap it with something else, or just remove it entirely if we need to down the road. But for right now, we're just going to install these two inner tags here since they weren't being used by anything else. All right, with that final 10K replaced right here, we are done with this lower board. There is one kind of glaring issue still, which is this giant glob of solder and whatever this bridge connection is doing here. We'll figure that out down the line issue, because I don't fully understand the top boost integration yet and kind of what that means and what this is doing and what this is connecting to. So I'm going to leave it for now, but just know I'm very aware of this very ugly solder joint, and we will fix whatever's going on here once I better understand that. So moving on down the line, I think we'll go ahead and take care of the electrolytics here. This is a 33 microfarad, which was connected here for the top boost. And then these are two 10 microfarad caps. We're going to replace these with a dual F&T and this with another F&T cap. And possibly sort out this ground connection here as well. So let's go and do that now. Of course, I just said all that, completely forgetting that we have a bypass cap that we will be replacing. So this capacitor right here on the lower board, and there's one bypass cap here and another here. All three of those will be replaced with the Sprague Atom 25 microfarad 50 volt caps. So we will be putting that in here, and then we'll move on to these bigger filter caps. So the first thing we want to do is just go ahead and remove it. Now I might clip the leads to make it easier. Let me just add some solder and see if I can pull it out or not easily. If not, I might just clip the leads. So here we can see the bypass cap. Looks like it's TCC, micropack 25 microfarad, 25 volt max, CE131CD, British made, TCB/UH2910. I'm sure one of these things is a date code that'll help us date the amplifier. So I'll put that off to the side, but we'll be replacing that again with the Sprague. I splurged a little bit and got the Sprague Atom 25 microfarad, 50 volts. I like that it's bigger, fits in on the board a bit better in my opinion versus the super small caps that are normally used. So we'll have it kind of floating just like we have the originals floating. So now that we have the leads removed, we'll just go ahead and clean out the joints just like we've been doing. Relying on the braid to make sure we don't break any of these. So we've got the Sprague mocked up here. I've got just this helping hand holding it up because I do want it to sit high like the rest of the caps do. I do have the leads long, but we will trim those. But first, we just want to get one side soldered on and held, and then we can focus on the other side. Nice. There's our first bypass cap, all looking pretty. We got two more of those to do, but that looks great and is sitting nice and level with the other big caps here off the board. Looks sharp. So with that, we are now complete with everything on this tag board, at least from what I know now. Obviously, we'll learn more once we start it up, but we're pretty far from that, so we can go ahead and shift our focus over to the electrolytics with the 33 microfarad in the dual 10. So let's go ahead and do that now. I changed my mind. Let's just go ahead and swap all of the resistors that need to be swapped between these two boards. And since there's only one more, at least that we know of right now, and that is this right here, which is a 22K. So we've got a 22K replacement here. We'll go ahead and shorten the leads and get that installed. All right, let's go ahead and solder this in. We'll do the back side first. Very little room, got to be very careful here. Perfect. So we've got our 22K in there, and I believe that marks the last resistor we need to swap, at least again, until we turn it on and find out if there's any issues with, noisy resistors or anything like that. But for now, I'm pretty happy with that, so we can go ahead and move on. While we're here, I think we'll go ahead and attempt to do this bypass cap. This one is gonna be so tough. There's just no room at all, but we're gonna give it a shot. And if it becomes an issue, then I'll have to figure out a possible solution, maybe doing a different tip on the soldering iron or somehow lifting the board or something. But I like to give it a shot first, and then we'll see what we can do. It's not as thick, the Sprague, versus this, so I should be able to have more room. And if I have it lifted up and floating a bit more, I might be able to snake it under as well. So let's go ahead and clip the leads on this and take it out, and we will give that a shot. All right, so you're not going to be able to see a whole lot here, but obviously I've got the helping hand holding it, and I'm holding it off to the side a little bit so that I have the room to fit with the soldering iron and make this connection. It's not going to be as bad as I thought it was going to be because the replacement cap is much, much smaller. Or really just thinner. That's the biggest reason. Still a tricky reach. Okay, so we got that one side in. Now we can go ahead and fish through the other side. It's definitely one of the harder joints I've had to solder. Beautiful. Just like that, we've got 2 out of the 3 cathode bypass caps swapped. One more to do. All right, so the last cathode bypass cap is right here. And this one, again, is going to be very tricky in the back. There's almost no room at all. So the first thing we'll do is cut the leads, and then we will use the desoldering braid and fish out the leads, clean up the eyelets, and then gear up for the new install. Awesome. Okay, so that is the last of the 3 cathode bypass caps swapped. Everything looks great. Really happy with that. And I think, looking it over, that means we are good with both boards. Now, obviously, this is assuming that we're not going to have leaky coupling caps, which we very well could, and maybe some noisy resistors. There's also lots of these little caps right here, these Hunts capacitors that have a reputation for not being that great. I do have some disc caps to replace those as needed, but I think we'll just go ahead and approach it like under the assumption everything's working, and then we will circle back to that after we fire the amp up. I think that's going to be the game plan for this. All right, it's quite late now, so do I want to continue or not? Do I want to? Yes. Should I? Another question. All right, so I installed a bigger washer here just to kind of spread the load a little bit, and then I still retain the original terminal here as well as the little tooth washer and the nut, and there's still enough threads to get it nice and tight on there. So I feel like that's just a better connection, so I think we're gonna maintain that there. And then it's also, you'll notice, off to the side a little bit so that we still have room for the ground connections. Now, I don't really think you're supposed to be sharing the ground connection for the 3-prong cord as well as with a cap, for example. So I guess perhaps I could use this other chassis bolt for the 3-prong ground connection. I'm not really sure. I need to look up some other videos and see how other people are doing the 3-prong conversions on these to see where they do the ground, because you can't just solder to the chassis like you would on a fender right here, because this is an aluminum chassis. Part of it's steel, but part of it's aluminum. So, and this is the part that we can't solder to. So we need to go to a bolt. Just the question is where, which one? Maybe you feed it through the grommet over here. I'm not really sure. So I got to figure that out. But we're not at that stage anyway, so it's not a big deal. So let's just kind of move this stuff out of the way and stage up a little bit. They're kind of holding each other together, and then, you know, if I were to silicone that, it'd be pretty solid. This would all kind of hold together, and then this could just go directly straight down into that ground connection, and there's plenty of room for the leads off of these to go here. So I think we'll do that. Now, I don't actually have any silicone right now. I just used up the last of it, so I think we'll just kind of stop here, and then tomorrow I can go to the store. There's some various pieces I need to get, some hardware pieces anyways, so I think we'll just kind of knock all of that out at once. But overall, I'm actually really happy with the progress we made tonight. I think we got a lot done, and I'm feeling good about this project. I think this is going to go pretty smoothly, and I do have a goal in mind. I have a gig coming up at the end of this month. So actually 2 gigs at the end of this month, and my goal is for this to be ready for that. So that's the goal. We'll see if we get there, but I'm going to do my best. So, all right, I think we'll end there. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and stay tuned for the next episode. All right, see ya.